Hey guys, welcome to another edition of VFX Live, CG Spectrum VFX Live. I haven't had my coffee yet, so excuse me. But my name's Daniel Hourigan. I'm head of effects at CG Spectrum, and we're going to be chatting all things Houdini again today. Hey Alan, I had a good week. The sun is shining here after a very bad storm last Friday. How are you? The whole, like where we live in Victoria in Australia, the whole state was almost out of power for some amount of time. My parents only just got power back today. They were out the whole weekend, which is crazy. Luckily, I was able to keep working. So, today, I am going to be working on, as the title suggests, I'm going to be looking at Dune. I haven't seen it yet. Hey Sebastian, I haven't seen Dune yet, and it doesn't look like I'll be able to until December, according to the release information that I looked up, which sucks, but I've been able to watch the trailer. Dune! Yeah. You had some trick-or-treaters, Rizwan. We didn't have any here. There's not too many kids on our street, unfortunately. Not that it's a massive thing in Australia anyway. Alright, so I've seen the trailer. Hey, Michael. The trailer is very exciting. Has me, people were like, are you going to see Dune? And I was like, no, I'm not really interested. But then I sat down and watched the trailer the other night, and it does look particularly impressive. So I think I will be going to see it when it comes out in another month. So yeah, I think someone on our Slack channels suggested that it would be cool to do a session on the sand effects, and I think it would be really cool as well. I'm going to do a few things. There's a few different effects that I can see in the trailer, and having not seen the film, I can't kind of recreate those things that I haven't seen. But there's a few really cool effects in the trailer, and I've just sort of snapshotted or found some GIFs of some of them. This one definitely is very cool, so I thought I might try and recreate that one today, or at least start recreating it. And then, hey Vanya, how's it going? Happy Halloween. I like your latest effect that you posted, Vanya, on Instagram. Looks really cool, and YouTube, I suppose. If anyone, you should post your link, Vanya. If anyone hasn't seen Vanya's work, it's very impressive, and I highly recommend going and taking a look at his YouTube channel. The Godzilla work is especially impressive. So yeah, I thought I'd recreate this one. Hey, no worries. It's awesome work. I really think you've done an amazing job. So yeah, there's a few things. Obviously, this is a good shot of the sandworm itself. The effects are pretty minimal in this, but then we have a shot like this. It's not really that interesting for me to recreate. This one is definitely one of the more interesting ones. And then I was just looking at this shot. So there's that big shot of the big explosion, but this shot is really interesting, and I could only sort of isolate it as part of a sequence. My GIF capturing skills are not that great, but this was really cool, this kind of surface type effects. And that would be something really cool to recreate. I'd love to see more of that sequence if there's more in it. But I think that could be a really cool thing to tackle as well. But I think first I'm going to tackle this one. So I'm going to try and recreate this and see how I go. Hey Keegan, I'm good, thank you. How are you? Hey Zimia. I think that's Zimiha. Thanks for joining me, everybody. It's good to see you. I hope it's sunny and warm where you are, although if most people are in the northern hemisphere, maybe it's getting a little colder, but it's nice and sunny here today. All right, so let's dive in. Also, I'm working in Houdini 19. Very exciting. Haven't really had much of a chance to play with many of the new tools yet. But you know, it's always good to have an update. The first thing I'm going to do here, would you take a look at the scene when the starship left the planet and it was like boom, 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 flash away? Oh, okay, I'll take a look at that. I'm not going to bring the trailer up on here, but I will have a look afterwards. And yeah, we could take a look at some other ones. I mean, there's definitely some really impressive explosions and battle kind of scenes as well. So we could, you know, if there's enough interest in me looking at that stuff as well, I could certainly take a look at some of the other effects. I mean, it's, you know, it's the sand ones that I find particularly interesting. But yeah, look, there's tons of great effects in that. So I'm going to grab, because I want to try and recreate this, you know, as it is. I'm going to get a dude running in there. So I'm just going to Mixamo to grab some animation, grab something. I think there is somebody with a cape in here. I mean, this one, you know, kind of has a similar vibe, even though it's, yeah, it's kind of got a hood, black, no cape, but we could always add a cape if we wanted to. It's got a bow, I guess that doesn't matter. And then we'll go to animations. So, you know, if you haven't used Mixamo before, you can just search for animations. Standard run, that looks pretty good. There we go. Yeah. That one actually looked the best, I think. Standard run. Where was it there? It's a nice quick run. You can always delete the bow if we wanted to, but it's kind of a nice touch as well, I suppose. All right, so let's convert that to in place running. There we go, and download. Ah, sign in to download. All right, let me just. I thought I was signed in, but I apparently wasn't. Let me just do that. So this will come in as an FBX, and then we'll be able to bring it in through the agent node, which is what I usually use. You can do FBX imports, but I usually just use the agent node. All right, so lost my character. Awesome, thanks Mixamo. Erica Archer. Sorry, let's see. Black mist with just a few lights, the old witch. Oh yeah, okay, cool. I'll take a look at that and see what it looks like. Yeah, Vanya, look, it probably is an insanely large grain sim, but I think there are probably some, you know, things that we can do to make it a little more, you know, efficient and possible for the rest of us. Obviously, you know, the studios that do this, I don't know who did that particular effect. I know there are quite a few studios working on this. Obviously those studios have large resources and render farms, you know, a little bit more you know, capable of producing really, really large effects. But you know, when I look at that effect, I can see, you know, some potential for how I could make that efficient, or maybe, you know, I don't know. It's a combination of things. I think there is a lot of pyro that I see there. Yeah, you can see this dissipating effect here that goes into the mouth. That's pyro for sure. And then there's definitely grains as well, but maybe pyro can be a large part of it, you know, and perhaps advect points through it using pops, which would be significantly faster. Yeah, I have 128 gig as well, Vanya, and yeah, absolutely, you still need to cut corners. I mean, you know, imagine imagine a time when 180, 128 gig wasn't possible. Like you still had to do this stuff and do it to a high level, but you know, you had to kind of come up with these efficient ways of working. And I think even though you don't have to as much these days, it's still a good idea to do it, because it means that it's just going to be easier and not so heavy on resources and not take as long. Alright, so I'm going to load this in now. So it's my standard run. So I'm going to go FBX, go and find that standard run. There we go. Hey, look at that. Okay, so there's our running character. And let's go back to this GIF. So we've got sandworm in the center, running character just to the right of center, and then, you know, the camera's obviously pulling back at the same time. So I'm going to have to recreate the sandworm as well. I don't know, I was kind of wondering whether I should do that completely or whether I should just do it in a simple kind of way. But I might spend some time making it look kind of cool. It's not that complex, really, you know, from the front. It's a tube filled with like these hairy teeth things, and then, you know, texture. I think, you know, we could make a pretty convincing, simple one. So the first thing I do, which you know, I'm not really an animator, so there's possibly a better way to do this with characters, but what I do is usually just create an offset in the direction that I want the character to run, which is why I downloaded the in-place one, so it's just running on the spot. And I just eyeball the offset. So, you know, you can see $F is obviously way too fast. $FF divided by, let's do divided by 4 first of all, and then hit play and see, turn on the real time and see how those footsteps land. And actually that's not too bad, but what we want to just make sure is that there's not too much sliding going on. So there's quite a bit of sliding when the footstep plants. So and you can see when I get it too slow, that forward movement, it kind of looks like she's running on the spot a little bit, like she's sort of, you know, there's some sort of, like it's as if wind's pushing her back. So you want to kind of get it just right. Let's try divided by 6. See, that feels not too bad. If you zoom in and just have a look at that footstep, you can see where she plants it right on the 3 line there, and it gets pushed back a little bit, and then there's a little slide forward. It's challenging to get right, but I think that's probably... Greetings, Daniel, from Copiapo, Chile. Hey, thank you, Mimo. Yes, I do have a contact that you can ask me. I think I shared it last week as well. You can get me at Daniel Hourigan at cgspectrum.com. There you go. Hopefully that comes across. Feel free, anyone, to send me an email. Ask questions. If you have questions about the courses that we teach or just other questions in general, feel free to reach out. So, and also, please feel free to post in the comments, YouTube, or ask me live. I'm happy to answer questions live as well, if you feel like sharing. So, that looks pretty good. You know, we're going to position her sort of... Let's create our camera first of all. So, new camera. Going to make it a 1920 by 1080 camera. You'll notice that a lot of cameras... yeah, this one... Yeah, I think it's anamorphic. The aspect is not often 1778, which is what 1920 by 1080 is. So often the aspects will be, you know, maybe an anamorphic, more anamorphic aspect where you'll see, you know, like that. You can see how the bars come down and they're a bit more widescreen. That's, I've worked on, I think, I can't remember which film it was. Maybe John Wick or Wolverine, maybe. It seems to ring a bell, being completely 2 times pixel aspect, which was pretty widescreen. So yeah, it's, you know, sometimes it's interesting to play with the aspect. Can get a bit problematic with compositing sometimes and resolutions that you bring in, but yeah, you know, I'm just going to leave it at 1. What I usually do is just do pixel aspect of 1 and then add crops in Nuke so that I can play with that effect of being widescreen. It just makes it feel more cinematic. So, alright, there's my camera. Let's create a grid. There's my grid. Let's make it big. 20 by 20. Tube. Oh, that's interesting. Tube create, tube primitive. What's tube create? Does it make it a geometry? Ah, okay. It makes it a polygon. There's all these new like things that you come across when you're working in Houdini 19 that you're like, what is that? So I'm going to, this is going to be my very simple worm for starters. So I'm just going to copy, paste relative reference to link those up, and I can just do that. Let's check out my reference. The worm's pretty well centered on the frame. So instead of moving my worm off axes, what I'm going to do is move my camera to center my worm. There's no point, you know, moving something off axes, because that just makes everything a little bit harder. Oh, I do like this in Houdini 19, this edge selection that you get. Now, instead of making the whole thing yellow, which makes it hard to see sometimes, they've made it just select the edge, which is great. So now that I've come up with my footstep transform, $FF divided by 6, I'm going to just offset this to the correct position as well. So I could always offset it forwards as well in frame if I wanted to. And then, you know, she'll run off. Let's check out my camera. Oh, I didn't actually move my camera. Let's lock. There we go. And so the worm is also coming forwards and the camera is animating back. So we also need to drive the worm forwards. So let's check out. It's coming pretty fast, but it's never actually, it seems like the distance between the 2 characters and the effects doesn't really seem to get much closer in this short duration of the shot anyway. So we could just take the same transform and apply it to the worm, so that the worm's position and the character's position stay in lockstep. So there, you can see the worm and the character are now just sort of tied together. We could also do that same animation to the camera. So yeah, you can see that. So we could also apply that to the camera if we wanted to. Or we could, because we've got a position on the camera already, what we could do is put a null down, parent the camera to the null, and apply that $FF divided by 6 to the null. And that will move the null at the same rate. So that's interesting too. You know, there's all sorts of ways that we could approach this in terms of the animation. The camera could also just change focal length, you know, over time as well to create that feeling of pulling back. So that maybe the aperture or the focal length is a little larger at the start. So, you know, let's disconnect that from the null. We have the focal length at 50, say, and then as the character sort of pulls out, we zoom. I guess we need to do a combination of the 2, you know, to create that effect. So, you know, if I was then to pull out as well as adjust the focal length, I don't know, maybe. I think just locking them together is probably a good idea. Maybe just recreate a little bit of the, I don't know, just play with it. You can create some, you know, some interesting effects if you play with the focal length and apertures. You can see that kind of zooming sort of thing that happens. I'm just going to do 72 frames, so I'm going to set these curves, just shift click on those animated parameters, set them to linear. so that you don't get a slowdown happening. You can see how that now, there was a bit of an ease before. You don't really want to see those eases. So usually just set them to linear, so it's the same constant speed the whole time. Alright, so let's... I'm lazy, so I just write char for character. This is going to be my ground, and this is going to be my worm. So let's take a look at the worm. This actually could be applied right at the end, this animation, and we could just model a worm up here. So let's go create a bit of a longer tube. And we can always have another transform here, pushing the worm back into the right spot for the start of the animation. So I'm not worried about the position at the moment. I'm just going to try and create that worm. So if we take a look at the worm, you know, what I see here is a tube shape with a poly-extruded thickness and then scattered sort of teeth. It's also beveled, you know, there's a bit of a bevel going on there, and then scattered teeth on the inside. So let's try and recreate that. I'm going to give this some rows as well. We don't need it to be, you know, super duper long. It could just be, you know, we're not going to actually see a lot of depth. So we'll give it a little bit of depth, but we don't need to go crazy. Let's go poly extrude now. We'll extrude the interior. Output back. There we go. So there's our thickness. We could create a little inset. That gives us that little bevel there. And then I'm going to turn on output front group, because I'm going to use that then for maybe my scattering. You can see how it shows up blue. Let's just put a reverse down. That will flip the polygons so they show up grey again. And you should then be able to see if I blast that poly extrude group, extrude front, delete non-selected, there's my inside surface that I can use for scattering. So if I then, oops, scatter, scatter points on there, and copy 2 points a line. Now, probably need to give it some normals. Facet, pre-compute normals. And what you see is that the lines are oriented kind of around the tube. The reason is when you use normals for orientation of a scatter, see how they're all pointing inwards. That's what the behavior that we want for our line. But it actually uses things oriented down the z-axis. And if you have a look at the line is oriented pointing up, y. So, thanks, Ivan. Glad you're enjoying it. So the line is pointing up y. You need, when you're using normals as an orientation, you need to point it down z. So we'll turn the direction from there to there. And now it's oriented down z. And we get the lines pointing inwards. So there's our hairy mouth. If we merge that back together, we should be able to see that. So let's just turn off relax on our scatter and up the amount, and then we get our kind of mouth of, you know, mouth of hairs. We could also put a poly wire on those if we wanted to. So I might turn on pack and instance and then put a poly wire here. And then we've got mesh. Going in and out. Are you using Houdini 19? Oh, yes, I am, Michael. You can see, it's behind my camera, you can't see it. I am using Houdini 19. Not that I'll be, well, I might be utilizing some of the new features, I don't know yet. I haven't really had loads of time to play with it just yet, so I haven't really experimented too much with many of the new features. Let's have a look. So probably what I want to do is create a bit of a taper inside as well, so that I don't have this kind of perfect tube. Rendering Karma, that's an interesting prospect. Maybe, I don't know. I've had a bit of play with Karma so far, but it's possible. I could try it. I could try it. It's not, you know, it's faster, and I had a bit of a play with the XPU alpha version as well, which definitely seems quite fast, but also limited. I don't think I will like it, Vanya, just because, you know, I'm used to doing things a certain way, and it's all very new and different. Usually takes me a while to you know, change my way of thinking. Look, if it's better and it's faster, then I'll definitely give it a chance. So yeah, look, I'm definitely going to look into it because you know, I want to understand it. But you know, for me, it's all about speed, ease of use. You know, if it's crashy, that puts me off as well because I want it to be pretty stable. You know, it's all, so you got to think about all those things. You don't have to use things just because they're there. If they don't work for you, you know, you use whatever works. All right, so maybe the tube, we've got these two radiuses that I linked up, but maybe I can take the back one in, and then that will create that kind of tapering back. I don't really know how they have it working on the worm itself. It's just a lot of darkness, so it's kind of hard to tell at what point, you know. Maybe I'm sure there's some anatomy of sandworms out there that I could take a look at. But if that's just darkness, you know, that will render as darkness. That's kind of okay for now. Let's take a look at the worm itself. So we could subdivide. There we go. A bit of a smooth worm, and I mean the surface we could do with displacement. You know, I'm sure we could jump onto Quixel or jump onto some of the other websites and get some. You know, even Polyhaven has some pretty good free textures now that have displacements. So if we go textures, let's have a look and see if we can find like a cracked mud or something. Might be kind of cool. Even if you just use the displacement and not the texture, it can be, you know, it can be kind of interesting. Oh, rock could be interesting. Like if you use the displacement there, you know, you don't have to use the texture. You could create your own procedural shader and just, yeah, you know, use the displacement part. Let's look at mud. See if there's anything. Dry ground. And you can obviously, you know, kind of merge different displacements together. Like this displacement might be interesting. It has that sort of feeling of, you know, that cracked skin that we could kind of see. This is an 8K map. I'll hit download and let that go. No worries, Vanya, that's okay. Usually when working for production, do you provide AOVs for comp? Yeah, absolutely. Look, it depends the studio. All studios like have different ways of working. Method in Melbourne, where I work predominantly, or where I have worked predominantly over the years, the effects artists tend to do a lot of lighting and also sort of pre-comp work. So definitely there, you are responsible for providing even final renders. So that's, you know, yeah, absolutely, you'll be doing AOVs and final renders and all that stuff, and lighting and everything. But other studios, bigger studios tend to have a dedicated lighting for effects as well, so the effect will be passed on to lighters who will then, you know, kind of do the AOVs and all that stuff that's necessary. It just depends on the studio. If you're working at a smaller studio as an effects artist, then you're probably going to be the one doing the renders as well. And honestly, I prefer that because it means that I'm in control of what I have created, and I'm the best person to kind of know how to light that stuff and what data might be available, you know, to use for shaders and all that kind of stuff. Whereas a lighter who doesn't have any experience with effects might not really understand the intricacies of what you've created. So, yeah, me personally, I mean, it's just what I'm used to again, but me personally, that's what I kind of like. I like to be able to handle the whole thing. But I'm much more of a generalist artist. So I have those skills across, 3D, nuke and lighting and all that kind of stuff. I think it's good to have those skills, or to at least have an understanding of, of all that kind of stuff. Because it makes you a better artist if you understand how your thing is going to be lit and how the lighter is going to use it and what sort of data they might want and need. So I've just added a little noise here using a displace normal. So I plugged that noise through a fit so I can play with it. You saw me crushing it in the color there. Yeah, that's alright, Vanya. And AOVs are, crucially important. It's very, very important for compositing and for being able to manipulate your things after you've finished working with it. Yeah, absolutely. You definitely, look, I'm not an animator. I don't pretend to animate. Well, I do pretend to animate, but I don't have to know how to animate the way an animator has to know how to animate. I do need to know how to animate a little bit, and often it's hard surface things that I might need to move around or do something with. But it does help to know a little bit of what happens and a little bit of how to model, because maybe you need to model a little sandworm or something one day, or just a bit of debris that you're going to add to your effect. It's important to understand all those facets of everything. Alright, so I've given this a little bit of noise, but I've also got this texture that I've just downloaded. So let's go and bring that in. Just going to pull that into my folder here. And I might save this just before I lose everything. Don't want to have a crash. Okay, so let's just say Dune effect 1v1. And now let's go and create a material. So principled shader. So I'm just doing this the way, the way I know how for now. I'm going to go displacement, texture displacement, texture path, and then I'll see that disp 8K there. It's going to be a bit slow at 8K, but, hopefully it won't be too bad. Now, when you're looking at the offset, and in displacement and the effect scale, it is a good idea to have a look at what that map is. Some displacement maps can be configured differently. Some can be configured with a mid-grey background. So then you do need a negative 0.5 displacement. This one does look like it is a mid-grey. So basically in a map like this, white is positive displacement and black is negative displacement, but some maps can be configured so they're all positive and the black remains the original level of the geometry. So it will be interesting to see what this one looks like. Let's have a quick look. So I'm just going to hit cancel. I'm going to apply this to the worm, but I'm going to just get rid of the teeth for now, and then I'll put a little environment light down, and I guess I'll just use these horrible built-in ones. It might be okay. What's going on with our worm? Principled shader. Where are you, Mr. Worm? Surface. Reflectivity, 0. Oh, there we go. I don't know why it's transparent. Ground char, I'll just turn that off for now. Let's check out our attributes, just make sure there's no weird attributes making it transparent. Might just be wacky viewport. Don't know. So I've just dragged Principled Shader 1 on there. And that has that displacement in there. Let's just check it out in the render view. The thing, the thing that I don't like about Karma is that you have to rebuild the entire network, or I guess maybe you need to think about it from the start, the way that you set it up. But it's not, as far as I know, it's not as easy as this to get a render going. I have to actually then go and set up my render environment and apply shaders in a much more kind of, I don't know, just convoluted way. To me, that seems, it seems like the long way to go. When you're working on a long shot and things like that, it's great. But for very quick look development, I still find that this workflow, really works for me. But maybe if I was setting up a shot to do properly, it might be worth investing the time to spend, Material X and Karma and all that kind of stuff. For me, Karma is an unproven, tool, which I need to spend time investigating. But, Mantra is a proven production-ready tool set that I know works, so that's why I fall back to it, even though it is slower. But we'll get there. It's the same reason why I do have Karma and ROPS. Oh, cool. Well, maybe that's an option then. It's the same reason why I like Redshift. I have Redshift, but I often find that I still fall back to Mantra just because of the annoying having to reset things up in Redshift and things not being as straightforward. Alright, so you can see the offset. When I take the negative offset off, it really sort of inflates this thing. I just realized I don't have UVs either. Yeah, look, I really enjoy Mantra as well. So I'm gonna create that offset, but let's give this some UVs. We need UVs in here. So where would we do that? Let's do that right back here, even. Back here, you can see that displacement affecting the viewport, so I'm going to turn that material off. For some reason, when I turn materials off, they never turn off, so if I go to a different tab and then go back, they turn off. I don't know if that's just my particular graphics card being funny, but yeah, it's kind of annoying. Oh, that's interesting. The UV texture now has a UV quick shade built into it, by the looks of it. So you don't need to do the UV quick shade after. I think that's new. Let's see. So what am I going to do? Am I going to do just a Z projection? Or should I maybe do a UV unwrap to get better UVs across the whole thing? Yeah, that's probably... What might be an issue here is this seam between the front face and the edge of the tube here. So you can see here how the seam kind of is continuous, but here it is fragmented where it stops and then goes onto another tile. So I don't know, maybe I should do a cylindrical wrap. That then will create stretching on the front face, but it might be okay. Let's see, so I could kind of play with it so it gives me slightly better. Oops. I've got that. I think I can do fixed boundary seam, and that fixes that. We'll create, there's a little bit of a seam there. I suppose I could rotate it so the seam, maybe not. Or what I could do actually is rotate it that way, maybe. No, it looks like the seam is just there. I don't know. I'm not sure what the best answer is there. So that scale does nothing. This one. Drawn skull. So I don't know. I don't know about that. Email is definitely the best way to get in contact. I would email admissions, probably, if you want to have a call or schedule a call. I mean, we do Zoom calls with people, prospective students, things like that. So you could potentially do that. Just email through the website, and then you might be able to schedule a call or something with somebody. So let's see. Just trying to get a good, half decent UVs. It's a little bit compressed here, which is that, it's that scale there. But it doesn't have to be perfect. Okay, so I'm not using the unwrap, I'm using the UV texture. Let's take a look at that. You can see that those UVs just flow on through, move back. Interestingly, when I select it, it does seem to show up my whole mesh now, which I thought it wasn't doing anymore, but maybe it's something to do with the level of mesh that I have, or, I don't know. Alright, so back to the render view. Hit save, hit render, see what happens. Yeah, calling is a tricky thing, I guess, when the school is very international, and that there are people all over the world who work for CG Spectrum, and the teams are kind of distributed. There are lots in North America and Canada. Thanks, Sebastian. Yeah, it's getting there. I mean, you can see that kind of cracked texture in there. We've got some, polygonal stuff going on. Let's see if we can do, what have we got? Render polygons as subdivision. Let's try that and see if that helps with this. Displacement's a kind of slow thing in Mantra, and rendering in general. It sort of does. Oh, there we go. So there's the subdivisions applied at render time that just smooth that stuff out. And you can see the interior of the worm is getting nice and dark, so that's kind of cool. I think we probably need to take a look. Wireframe enabled. Yeah, maybe the I had like shaded wire on. Maybe that's why. So let's take a look at that reference again. Have a look at our lighting. Our lighting is very ambient. There's no hard shadows. The front of the front face of the worm is very lit, so is the character. So we've got light, sort of very. This one's very directional, but what we want is a more ambient one. Let's choose Lenong, because I think that one is. Oh no, that one's kind of. Yeah, it's a bit more ambient, but I think it still does have a sunlight. Maybe not. Must be behind clouds. That one should yield a slightly more ambient lighting scheme. May I ask, if I wanted to do effects, like doing epic battles, scenes you see in Transformers, epic mech fights, what course should I look at? Well, if you want to do effects, it's the Houdini, it's Houdini course. That is what the Houdini course is basically going to teach you, is how to do effects, whether it's epic battles or or whatever, sandworms. It's the type of effects doesn't really matter. It's more about you need to learn Houdini if you want to do that stuff. So we get people doing Houdini for all sorts of reasons, but some people may want to be a film VFX artist, and that's what sounds like what you're interested in pursuing. So yeah, that would be just the Houdini effects diploma. If you're interested in more film in general, like if you haven't done anything before, then it's sometimes a good idea to do something like the Foundations course that we offer, which teaches you a little bit of animation in Maya and modeling, and then also an introduction to Houdini. Hey Ibrahim, thanks for joining me. Hey Tom, I haven't seen it, as I was saying at the start. I won't get to see it until December. It doesn't come out here. I guess you know, we've been in lockdown, so the cinemas have been closed, and they've chosen to push the release so that more people can watch it when the cinemas open. I think they're open now. But yeah, I'm kind of disappointed that I won't be able to see it for a little while. Alright, so this environment light is a bit lame. Have you seen it, Tom? Did you like the movie? Has anyone seen it? Give me your honest reviews. Oh, John Skull getting a BFA degree in film production. Interesting. Okay, cool. Yeah, look, I mean, certainly if you want to learn, if you want to be an effects artist and do those epic effects that you've seen on Transformers or Dune or whatever, it's Houdini. There's no question. You know, if anyone tells you any different, they don't know what they're talking about. It's Houdini all the way. So you gotta learn Houdini. Oh, Michael, you've seen it. Cool. Is there anything you didn't like about it? What am I looking up? Oh, I'm going back to Polyhaven because I'm going to go to HDRI's. It used to be called HDRI Haven, but it's all the same now. And I'm going to look for. Let's see if they have any desert scenes. So they've got this one, but it's got a bright sunlight in it. We could use it though. I'm going to show you something that's useful. I'm going to download the 4K version. Visually stunning, interesting story. Saw the original a few weeks earlier. Right. Oh, that's interesting. So the Dune 2 will be the second half of the movie, will it? I think I remember watching the original. It's really, really long, right? Okay, so I just noticed before when I was using Nuke that my camera froze, so let's see if I can use it without that happening. I don't know why that occurs, but let's see. So I'm going to load up, whoops, I'm going to load up this HDRI, show you something useful for once. It's got this bright sunlight in it, so in the reference image that comes on Polyhaven or HDRI Haven, there's a really bright sunlight, which we don't necessarily want if we're trying to recreate this, you know, this very ambient lighting, which, you know, arguably could be slightly more interesting with a bit of directionality, but if we want to get rid of that, we can actually just get rid of the sun. I may have shown you guys this like a long time ago. Yeah, cool, Drone Skull. Look, please reach out if you want to talk to somebody more about it. Email the contact through the website, and you will be put in touch with the right people if you want to talk about it further. Photoshop it, Sebastian. Yeah, that's right. Photoshop it. I use Nuke to do this because, you know, it's just I always have Nuke open when I'm working on effects, so I like using Nuke. But and often VFX studios are all Linux based, and there's no Photoshop for Linux, so often we don't really have the best kind of tools for doing this stuff when you're an effects artist. So we always have Nuke, so I use RotoPaint, and I'm going to just use the clone stamp, and then I'm going to just paint out the sun. And, you know, you can be as perfect as you like with it. Look, there's a lot of you can see, you know, when I'm sampling here and painting, and it's actually significantly darker in this area because there's a lot of bloom coming from this sun. So you could, you know, try and get it as close as possible, or, you know, you can use a blur as well. So, you know, you can just paint out the sun and then try and blur that to make it work a little better. Also, sometimes blurring the entire HDRI is good. You get rid of really sharp reflections and you get a more blurred kind of look, and it can also soften some of the lighting. So, you know, you don't have to be perfect with it, but it's more about painting out that really hot light. Ghostbusters movie. Oh, is there a new trailer out for that? I think I worked on the last Ghostbusters movie. I'm more excited to see this new one than I was about the one that I worked on. But still, it was fun. Yeah. Alright, so that's a pretty bad job, but you know, it will do, and we'll see the difference when I swap between the two. So I'm just going to write this out to somewhere. June. I'm just going to write it out as an EXR. EXR, HDRI, you know, they're all floating point images, so they have a lot of depth. June, so let's call this one Desert HDRI. I'll just put the file extension .exr, which will force Nuke to update its options. And I'm just going to render a single frame. So 1, 1, render. That will go through and do its thing. Alright, so let's go back to Houdini. Go and find this Desert HDRI. International trailer just released. Oh, cool! I'll have to check it out. I do like Ghostbusters. Well, that is interesting. Look at that, crazy colors. Well, so what we're getting is the reflection of the desert there. Just make sure that I've got aces enabled. I'm going to turn that off. So that I see the correct, well, not the correct, yeah, I guess just the linear colors. Halloween Kills, no, I haven't. Is that part of the Halloween franchise? I'm not really into scary movies. Had a bad experience with scary movies when I was a kid, and it kind of put me off them. Too many nightmares. Yeah, so this light ain't that great. Let's try looking at the original and see if I can find it. This one, maybe it's not a good one. You'll be able to see the difference. I guess it gives us that tonality from the desert, but yeah, I'm not like overly thrilled with it. Let's see what it looks like with this directional light in there. You can see it definitely helps having that directional light in. But the actual, you can see how it's no different in the areas where where the shadow is. So it is actually just that directional light in there does help. So what I'm going to do is go put my one back in, and then I'm going to add a little key light. We don't want to do much because, you know, the reference that we're looking at here doesn't have much of a key light, but it probably does have a little bit. So let's go, and maybe something like this. I'm just going to do a distant light. And because I'm trying to do lots of different renders, let's take the pixel samples down and do half res. I'm so out of the loop in movies. I feel like I don't know what you're talking about. Well, I don't. I think there was a Spider-Man No Way Home trailer. I did watch that, I think. That looked pretty cool. Some cool effects, right? Some big, like, character effects. I used to really like the Spider-Man movies, but I'm kind of a bit, you know, sick of all of them now. It just seems like there's a new one every couple of years, or every year, with a different character. So I kind of like this look a little better. It's not exactly the same as what's in the, you know, the trailer shot, But I like a bit of key light just for a bit of visual kind of contrast. Let's see if we can get that material working a little better. Go effect scale 1. Maybe even offset -1. Did I also take part in the movie? Ibrahim, are you talking about Ghostbusters? Or Dune? Ooh, okay, so that's with offset -1. That's obviously too much. I think 0.5 is definitely what we want. Oh, right, interesting. Tobey Maguire, wow. I'm not loving this this look that I'm getting here. Maybe my texture is just a little bit too large. So what I might do after my UVs, I'm going to put a UV transform. And I'm just going to let's have a look at those UV transform. So this will allow me to scale. Oh no, I just broke my camera. This will allow me to scale my UVs after the fact. So, you know, if I want a smaller texture, I can also do this in material context as well, just to keep it simple. I'm doing it here. So you can see that that gives me a much smaller UV map. That's probably a little too small. But that just might, maybe the texture is just a little bit too large. The concept art. Sorry, Ibrahim. Which movie are you talking about? It's a few movie titles been thrown apart. The movie I mentioned I worked on was Ghostbusters. I did the effects in that. Some of them, anyway, not all of them. So maybe the bubbly look is coming from my attribute VOP. Let's turn that off. See what it looks like without that. There we go. So that's what my texture looks like. It's not doing a lot. Probably spending a little bit too much time on this worm. Ghostbusters. Let's see. What did I do? We did. Yeah. I did do some vomit. There was there's a shot where the can't remember her name now. What was the ghost's name? There's a shot where they're in a mansion and this kind of blue floaty ghost woman comes out and vomits on one of the characters. That was the sequence that we did, and we did a lot of the kind of particles from the ghost, and then the ectoplasm vomit stuff. That was a bit of fun. And then we did this there's a sequence where like there's like a reactor or something and mirrors with ghouls behind them and that exploding. So I did a bunch of those shots. And what else? Yeah, lots of various little things, little electricity things, little sparks and just random stuff in that movie. Yeah. Alright, I think I was working on something else at the time as well. I sort of got pulled on to Ghostbusters for a little bit and then pulled off. Maybe to Game of Thrones. Can't remember. I think it was around the same sort of time. But yeah, it was fun. You know, it was fun stuff. Fun stuff to work on. Lots of particle effects. You know, lots of trails, lots of little magical kind of bursts of things happening. And then some more ghost stuff. Oh, Gertrude was her name, the ghost. Yeah, so she appeared in like the mansion, and then at the end in the big sort of fight that happens with all the ghosts. What's been my favourite project to work on? That is a good question. SR Saito says, I don't know how I'm meant to pronounce the SR. Can you create textures in Houdini? Yes, of course you can. You can create, well, you can create procedural textures from noises and things like that. You can create textures in the image context of Houdini. You can bring maps in, you can manipulate them, kind of like you might do in Photoshop, and then export them to use as a shader. Or yeah, you can use, just like I have done here with turbulent noise, you can kind of create those textures in the material context as well and apply them like that, which is kind of neat. Alright, so I don't know, this is probably fine. I've played with this long enough. Let's merge the teeth back in. So instead of applying the material to everything, I'm going to apply the material to this side, /matte/ principled shader 1. I'm going to merge this in. I'll create a different material for the teeth. And the teeth need some work as well, but they kind of might do for now. So I'm just going to put another principled shader down, because I do want to start working on the effect. That's why we're all here. Let's call this teeth. Oop, teeth. Favorite project? I'll come back to you, Alan. I don't know. I'll think about it. It's hard. You know, they all have their pros and cons. One more thing about Houdini. Does it teach you about particle effects, water, energy blasts, electrical powers, fires, tornadoes? Yeah, look, all of those things. Basically, we teach you everything that you need to know to be able to do whatever you want. And then it's kind of up to you how you apply that stuff. It's kind of, you know, we're more about teaching you how to use Houdini so that you can do whatever you want to do with it. And if you want to focus on those things, yeah, we do teach water, we do teach some electricity in the introduction to Houdini. Certainly teach fire. Definitely we do a tornado as well. But you know, if those are the things that you wanted to focus on, then that's the cool thing about being paired with an industry mentor in our courses, is that you can just go, well, hey, you know, I'm getting through all the course material. I want to focus on doing a fire tornado to combine two of those things, and you can just work with that. You know, if it was with me, you know, we'd just work with that together, as well as making sure that you understand everything that's being done in the course. It's about, you know, you getting the most out of it. So if you want to focus on sandworms, for instance, then that's, you know, that's totally cool. I like to keep it flexible so that we can just, you know, get the most out of it. Create textures in Substance Designer, Houdini projects. Yeah, look, it depends. I mean, you know, if they're really kind of photographic textures, they probably haven't been created in Houdini. But if they're more procedural noises and organic textures, you can absolutely create lots of stuff in Houdini. And that might be a good subject for a stream later on, at a later date. Because, yeah, you can do a lot. You can do a lot in the material context. You can do a lot in the image context. Composite view, you can see here, takes you to that image context. So absolutely, you can do a ton of stuff there. Let's see what's going on here. We got some wacky. Oh, you know what? I've got this principled shader applied here. Let me turn that off. That might be overriding. Or this might be having an effect, I don't know. Yeah, it was that shader applied at the top level, it was overriding it. Alright, so let me take another look at my little... So these are kind of white, this one's kind of grey. Let's give this much darker grey value. Yeah, Alan. I mean, lots of things I've worked on. I think some films have been not great films, but fun projects to work on. Um, the John Wick films are always kind of fun. It's lots of action and lots of gory stuff, which is always kind of interesting. My favorite genre of movie probably would be like action adventure, sci-fi, that kind of stuff. I really like, Indiana Jones and all those kind of movies. I don't watch a ton of movies these days. I used to be, really into movies and a lot of sci-fi and Stanley Kubrick and all that kind of stuff. But I guess I don't know if it's after working in films or just after kind of like watching a lot of films. I kind of got a little bit over it, and now I don't watch as many as I used to. Or maybe I just don't have the patience to sit down for 2 hours. Getting old. Alright, so what I just did there was added a little random expression to the P scale, which affects the scale of my lines. It's hard to see with so many lines in there, but you can see when I zoom in that I have all these different scales now. Alright, I mean, I could work on this worm for ages, and I have. So let's now turn on the ground. Let's check out the render with the ground, because that will affect the lighting. Saw an interview with people who worked in the Transformer movies, always saying it's very fun, despite some of them not being very good to watch. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the thing. A lot of these, those types of action movies and, VFX heavy movies, they're usually not great movies in terms of storyline and substance, but they're like a roller coaster ride, right? We don't watch them for their stories. We watch them to be kind of entertained with explosions and all that kind of stuff, epic battles, and seeing big robots fight it out with dinosaurs or whatever. So yeah, absolutely, they can be really fun to do all those effects, like all those kind of even really gory movies. I don't watch the end result, like working on It. You don't watch. I don't watch the movie. I'm not into, as I said, those scary movies, even though It is kind of funny. That was really fun to work on. Working on that stuff is great. It's very kind of entertaining to do heads rolling across the floor and things bursting out of skin and blood and guts and all that kind of stuff is lots of fun. But sometimes I don't like to see the end result in the movie. Yeah, I'm kind of liking this worm. I think it's looking kind of cool with the teeth. I think I need to create a bit of bend on the teeth. I'm just experimenting with the length, which maybe is a bit long now. Yeah, Alan, that Vex window is something I noticed as well. The numbers, for the line numbers in the Vex window. It's kind of handy. Alrighty. You can see how having the grid in there has affected the lighting. We get this nice dark kind of interior happening as well. But enough worm talk. Let's crack on to starting to do the effect. And the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to deform the ground, for starters. The grid. Because that's going to form the basis of my effect. We've got this worm traveling, let's see. I'm going to do just 72 frames. That's 3 seconds. It may be about the same time as the GIF, or it may be even less time. I was just recording something for one of our classes at CGS, and I was sort of saying, I may have mentioned it before here as well, that it's interesting to look at movies and count how many seconds shots go for. When you're working in Houdini, you tend to go, well, I've got 240 frames by default, I'll make my shots 240 frames. That's actually a really long time in the scheme of things. That, in reality, when we're working on this stuff at a studio, our shots usually are under 100 frames. Quite often, you will get long shots, shorter shots, you know, some are only 10 frames, that's always good. But yeah, you know, a lot of shots are actually really quick in VFX because they're cutting and jumping around. So I think it's good to, you know, work to a shorter duration because it actually makes it easier. You don't have to do such long sims, you know, all that kind of stuff. It's just so much easier. So what am I going to do? I'm going to take the worm here, out worm, and I might just copy these transforms and apply them up here as well, so that it's still moving the same. Oops. Take it from the UV point, I think. So that's just now my tube traveling along. Take that into my ground, object merge, char, worm, out worm. And now, your favorite effects trick and mine, attribute transfer. You see me do it every single time. And there's a reason for it. Oh, my colors are a bit weird. I think I might have aces applied to my viewport, or something else going on there. I don't know why that is displaying so weirdly. Some weird viewport things going on, I must say. There we go, black. Oh, that's interesting. It applies weird over there. Maybe it's because of that UV transform that's kind of showing up on there. I don't know. Attribute transfer. In any case, what I want to do is transfer CD from the worm to the grid. Oh, maybe it's because I had the other one. Yeah, that's it. I had the other one ghosted, so it was kind of creating an overlay. Hide other. Alright, transfer CD. And I'm just going to blur it ahead of the worm. I really only need to do it from the front of the worm. So I could blast the edge ring, and I could actually go back to my worm here and turn on the poly extrude, the extrude side, and you'll notice that that's the end caps. So if I do that, and go back to my ground, blast, extrude side, delete non-selected, and then I could just select that one and get rid of it manually. And then I get this. And then I can use that in a VOP. Stephen King's The Langoliers, Ivan. I don't know if I've seen that or heard of it, but are there giant worms in that? I don't know. Displace normal. So, PN, I'll have to look it up. So I'm just doing a displace along normal. Oops. And I'm going to bring in that color, CD, into the amount. And there you go. We get a little raised hill. So that's the start of the effect. So you can see that clearly here, that we get these two defined little hills. Because the worm is, you know, hollow in the middle, we're getting just the edges of that tube kicking up that stuff, and then in the middle you get not as much. So that informs that part of it. So let's have a look. There you go, you kind of get, you know, you can kind of see what I'm going for there. Let's see what happened with the char. I think this, because it was related to downloads folder, my dollar hip now is broken. Let me bring this in to the correct folder. Just want to have a look in context with the character. Should be able to do this now. There we go. Okay, so the character is too close. Looks like my worm is kind of missing the offset or something. Needs more offset. Or maybe just my character could do with some more offset. Let's offset character. my framing's a little different to the shot, but you know, we can always adjust it. Okay, but you can see that that ground plane there now gives me that, you know, I'm starting to put this whole thing together in terms of blocking out this effect, working out how far ahead of the worm, you know, the position of the character, all that kind of stuff. The character or the worm needs to come back more, I think. So I'm going to link these two together. Copy parameter, paste relative reference. And I'm going to manipulate this one. So I'm going to ghost and pull that back. Let's look through the camera. There we go. Now maybe our char we can bring back a little bit. That looks a little better. Alright, so, and you know, we can always adjust the camera later. So perhaps we could use this displacement of the ground to, well, displace the ground as well, but also to then do the effects, like generate the emission for this stuff. What I see is a lot of patterns as well. Like, you know, you kind of have these little sort of lines and clumps of stuff. So, you know, perhaps we could come up with something for that. We could potentially, let's have a look at creating a little fracture here. Just thinking about interesting ways of creating patterns. There's this new node now, which I used to be able to hit SCA and I would get scatter, and now I get scale. Curses. It's always annoying when they insert another node and it sort of, you're used to getting one node when you type a few letters and you don't get it anymore. Turn off relax, 500. So what have we got? We've just got a grid. Let's turn off create interior surfaces. So I'm just creating a kind of scattered, a broken up plane. Then when I do this, so let's see, maybe I'll do that first, then that, and then that. Let's try assembling these and packing them. Transfer CD. Is that going to work? Doesn't look like it does. Ah, create name. Transfer CD. It's interesting. Doesn't appear to transfer that color. I'm going to do that. I was thinking of doing a similar thing to kind of what I was showing in the last, it wasn't last week, but the week before, where I was displacing the ground using the packed pieces so they kind of lift up to create those chunks. But maybe I don't need to do this. Maybe I can do this just with a texture. Let's create another VOP and have a look at a whirly noise. And what you'll see, whirly noise. What you'll see if I give this enough subdivisions, or perhaps even a remesh, might give me a good density of polygons, is the different distance outputs here give you this kind of cellular pattern, or even a Voronoi. Let's try a Voronoi noise. You can see it's kind of similar. Distance. And if I run that through a fit, I can crush that down to create maybe some interesting patterns that I could use for emission. We've got jitter. Wow, that's cool. It's kind of not what I was expecting, but it's kind of interesting. I think also you can do, so those, that's not what I want. I think you can like combine the two. If you subtract one from the other, you can get some interesting things to occur as well. There we go. You see that? There's our Voronoi pattern. Let's plug the fit back in. Just that. Why hide? Perhaps it's negative. There we go. So we've got negative values. Let's flip that. There we go. So, you know, there's a few ways of creating this effect, but the Voronoi noise is interesting. You know, you get some interesting kind of things happening. I think you can use cellular noise as well to create this effect. Probably looks like it's based on UVs, this one. But you can create some interesting effects with this as well. Oh, we don't have any UVs. Maybe I could use P. Nope. Alright. Anyway, so this might give us some nice kind of emission patterns from these dunes. That's kind of what that's interesting. That's kind of what I'm looking for, is some interesting emission patterns. So perhaps I'll blast just the white away. So at cd.x greater than 0 points. Delete non-selected. There we go. So I can adjust this to delete more or less. I could also scatter points onto this to create a higher fidelity sort of thing. Maybe scatter. Let's just go turn off relax, turn off max points, and just get a whole ton of points. And there we go, we can see a lot more now. We could also just isolate the red components so that we're only dealing with those. That will mean that we only get like a ton of points scattered in that area, which is much more efficient than doing the whole grid. And now you can see we get this kind of thing happening. So we could utilize those to, you know, to be an emission for something. We could create some, I'll just use a point velocity node to create some velocities. Oops. So I'm going to do, I could do compute from deformation, but I think that's probably going to do some crazy stuff or nothing. I'm going to create my marker. Yeah, you can see that that's just mental. Because the point count's changing every frame, computing deformation is just gonna, you can see even at that scale, it's just really, really wacky. So we're just gonna do keep incoming, which is nothing, and then I'm gonna set curl noise, and also set conical noise. That allows me to create like an upward noise, but also spread it, which is really handy. And then add curl noise on top of that to create the randomness. And then that could go into a pop network, potentially. Let's just use a pop network to see what our velocities look like and what our particles kind of doing. Before we get into doing anything else, you know, this can be a good way of just seeing what those velocities are doing, what they're kind of generating, and what, you know, what sort of point count we want. Like if we set it to all points, turn off the guide. Guides are slow to display. How many points do we actually get? And, you know, that sort of stuff. So that, just starting simply rather than diving, you know, head first into grains or flip or vellum, you know, all that kind of stuff, or pyro. Just starting off simply with pops can kind of give me a good idea of what, you know, what my velocities might be doing, and what I need to, you know, what I need to do. What does pop force look like? 9.8. Oops. So you can see there, the velocities maybe, you know, are not enough when you add gravity in, so then I need to go and crank those up a little bit. Not doing anything with that yet. Or maybe I'll add the wrangle in there and just say V at V times equals 5, for instance, to crank that up. Alright, there we go. So, yeah, we could add a pop drag in there as well. Just to slow that stuff right down. It's probably just too quick though if we have to do 0.5 air resistance, so let's just back that off 2 times. So let's take that down to 0.1 again. There we go. And what we could do with the black and white map that we have here, I mean, we have isolated it into chunks as well, but we could also utilize that black and white, maybe even not do that blast, and just sort of say v at v as well times equals at cd.x, and that will multiply down the black areas. You can see how the black points don't have vectors now. If I comment that out, you can see we get a lot more vectors everywhere, but if I do that, you can see the black points don't have any velocities. And so what will occur is that the sort of grey points will get lower velocities and the white points will get the strongest. And we could even do an attribute blur before the scatter, or alternatively also play with the fit to not crush as much, but an attribute blur on CD will allow us to blur that a little bit more to create even greater fall off, and that will sort of affect things. Yeah, because we're then using that color to multiply the vectors, the V, it'll, sort of will affect it. So you can play around with those things as well. Let's see, maybe I'll crush this a little more just to create some smaller, more variation. Oops, just play around with that map. You see that? Now how I have these kind of, the black areas are staying down, but then the white areas are getting thrown up. So it creates this kind of interesting feeling, of stuff rising out of nothing. You could also, which I just thought might be cool, is let's just do, let's also do, maybe back here, I'm going to use a relative to point bounding box. Super useful thing, which will give me a bounding box value, which is between 0 and 1 for each axis, x, y, and z. I'm going to do a vector float to access just the y axis, and this will give me, if I plug it into color, you can see how it's black at the bottom and white at the top. It's really great for doing any kind of fall off. I can multiply this by the y component, even put a ramp in here, set to spline ramp, and then I can sort of fade the bottom away, or just have it really peek out at the top, so that what I'll get, because that's multiplying velocity, you see how now it's really low at the base, and I'll get this build up towards the top, which means that, it'll start getting kind of sucked up or lifting at the base, but then as it reaches the top, that's when it's going to be its biggest sort of kick out. You can see that sort of happening here. And yeah, maybe the kick needs to be a little stronger. So maybe we do need to up those velocities now again. Go 3, 4. So even with pops, we can create these really interesting types of effects just by really, thinking about the source, creating interest in the velocities. We can create that feeling of, stuff being pushed and stuff rising. I think our little mountains that we're using Could probably also do with a little bit of noise. You know, they're just these kind of very smooth little humps that we're getting here. So let's add some turbulent noise in there to this displaced normal. If we add that to, maybe we could do the scale with that, or we could just even add it, or add an additional displaced normal after the fact, or we could combine it with the amount, maybe. Let's try that. Or actually, maybe add to the amount. Hey, there we go. And perhaps, again, we'll use that relative point bounding box to affect that displacement just where we want it at the top, because we don't want to lift off the bottom too early. So let's multiply that noise. Oops. Multiply that noise by that ramp. Oh, and I need to do a vector float to just isolate the Y component. Oops. There we go. So now you can see I can kill the noise right at the bottom. Hopefully. It looks like it's not quite doing it. Why is that? Relative point bounding box Y. Maybe it's the way that this is being applied as a float value. Add, multiply. Perhaps what I should do is, let's create another displaced normal. And I'm going to use this noise to do the amount. Plug that into the output. Okay. And then we could add that one to this one. Whoa, okay. Yeah, actually that's that's not gonna work. Maybe we just add noise to this. That'll probably work. Let's add. There we go. Multiply. Okay, let's see if this works. Oh, you know what? I think it's because I forgot to set 3D noise. That's really odd. It's the axes that it's kind of working on is not right. I don't know why. Why? You know what? Maybe I should do this. Use that as the amplitude. Let's try that. There's two options here, relative to bounding box and relative to point bounding box. Why you no work? That is quite weird. I don't know what's going on. Maybe it's because of the displacement or something. I don't know, it's not working. Odd. That one definitely seemed to work. So let's try adding a turbulent noise on top of here. P. Just going to plug that into the amplitude and output P. Yeah, that one's working. I don't know why the other one wasn't working, it's kind of weird. But now we can see that that one, as I change this ramp, it's affecting that noise on top there as well. I don't know. Bizarre. So let's go and just play with that frequency. We can also put another multiplier on that amplitude and just go promote parameter, and that can be our noise kind of control. So we can add more or less noise if we wanted to. Yeah, you might want to have even two ramps. So, you know, this could be the ramp for Vel, L ramp, and then we could have another ramp parameter. Just doing the exact same thing, but we can create a different fall off for that ramp. Ramp 2, noise ramp. Here it is here, we want it to be a spline ramp. There we go, so we can kind of control that a little better. Original pearl in maybe? Okay. So you can see how it creates those kind of nice bursts. We could also kind of have a... I don't know if we need a wind, because the whole effect is advancing forwards. It's possible that we don't need it. We've created a little bit of an inefficient system here, because you can see we've got a lot of particles here that are just doing nothing. But actually, that might be cool if we do a static collider in there of the worm as well. So let's bring that worm over here, and we'll go, let's do a null, so I can pull it down here. Everyone's gone very quiet. I hope you guys can still hear me. Give me a holler if you can. What am I doing? I'm going to do a VDB from polygons here for the collision. And, you know, all this stuff will be beneficial when I get into doing anything else as well. So out geo or out worm geo. I should put a trail on this as well. Give me some velocities. That'll be important. And then out. Hey, Vanya. Cool. You're still there. Great. I'm glad you guys... It's always a little bit disconcerting because I have had so many issues in the past with sound and cameras and stuff. Oh, that's cool, Vanya. Look, I'm glad you get a lot out of it. It's really cool, and I'm very impressed with your work that you're doing. You know, using this stuff as inspiration. You're taking it just so much further than I do, which is great. Audio is offset from the video. Oh, that's not good. Sorry about that. I don't know. I'm reluctant to try and investigate changing it because it may I may just break it completely. That's odd. Outworm VDB. So let's check our collider. We're using volume sample. There we go. That's good. Alright, let's see how that affects the performance of these. Yeah, that's... Oh, cool. Thank you. I'm going to say Saito. Yeah, look, that's what I'm trying to get across to you guys is, you know, the process of starting and building a shot and the way to kind of approach it, and the, you know, the often simple ways that I use to approach this stuff. Because there is certainly a tendency when you're starting out to overcomplicate things. In reality, a lot of things in visual effects aren't as complicated as they might seem. And certainly in Houdini, it's very easy to overcomplicate things. To your detriment, you know, because you end up creating something that's really hard to work with. So, oh look, I'm glad, you know, that you guys get something from it. VDBs are definitely the way to go for collisions in flip, pops. You have to do it in oh, actually, you don't have to, but yeah, look, they're the most efficient and best way to get a decent collision from your geo. So, you know, you can use ray intersect, but it's actually quite slow when you get into the high detail when you want to create a good representation. If you want a good representation that's quick, proxy volume is the way to go, the volume sample, using a VDB. It's just way more efficient, it's much faster, and it gives you perfect collisions. It still uses the geometry to take the geometry surface attributes, so velocity is on the geometry. It's not on the VDB. So it takes that, pulls the velocity, it pulls normals, you know, if you don't have normals, you should create some. It pulls normals as well, so, you know, it pulls all that stuff off the surface, off the geo, but then it uses the VDB for the sort of positional collision information. So definitely that is the fastest way to go and gives you the most accurate collision. So we could add maybe a bit more bounce to this. You know, we could go to the physical, turn up the bounce, and that might create some more interesting interaction at this section where it's sort of driving through. And I mean, this could just be a layer. Well, velocity, you can have velocity on the VDB, but in this context, in pops, you won't be reading that velocity from the VDB on the static object. There are other ways of bringing in volume velocities. But not through this way. But we can have a look at that when we get, you know, more into Pyro or, you know, the other ones. But yeah, in this context with pops and particles, you're only using the geometry velocity. So creating a volume velocity won't help you. Alright, so we got a ton of points. They're all living forever as well. You know, potentially we don't need them to. We could have a look at these ones that are lying on the ground. You know, out of our popnet, let's just grab the particles, star pop star. We've got all these ones here. Oh, that's alright, Vanya. That are just kind of sitting there not being used. And we've got 3,700,000 points. Let's have a look in a wrangle and see what happens when we cull out slow moving points. So if length v at v, so we're measuring the speed of the particles. If the length is less than 1, let's say, remove, can't type today, remove point 0, at pt num. There we go. See how it got rid of all those ones on the floor. So they're the slow moving ones we're getting rid of. So we could do this, I mean we can do this as a post thing, but it would speed up the simulation if we did this as a condition in the simulation. We've got a lot of friction happening, or you know, a little bit of friction happening on the floor as well. I don't know if these, yeah. Bit of friction happening here on the floor. We could also cull this stuff before it goes into the popnet, so that we're only getting the really fast moving stuff. And then we could, of course, do the opposite, greater than on that side, and then recombine them after the fact if we wanted to have that slow moving stuff and the fast moving stuff together again. That might be a more efficient way to do it. So let's have a look at that. Although, yeah, I guess this is what is happening under the hood anyway. We're getting this raining effect where the black particles are just sort of, they're still emitting, but they're not shooting up, so it's just sort of raining down. So maybe we need to create a condition for that so that they don't do that and waste, you know, too many particles. But yeah, what we could do is then merge those two together and we get that hill back again. So we still get a similar kind of effect, just with much less particles. You can see we've only got 700,000 now. Maybe that is the better way to go. So what we could do as a condition on our gravity is to do a similar thing. So we could say, let's do, usually I'll just put one of these down to see, just get them to start me off with. So force times equals let's do force times equals length v at v and see what happens. So what you'll see with those black ones when they first get emitted, they're not going to be falling as much. You can see how that one here, right as it gets created, is not raining down. And as it speeds up, that force will be increasing. Now I don't know what this length v at v is outputting. One way to check would be to come out and in a little vector angle after the fact, just do, create a little attribute saying v at, or actually at f at speed equals length v at v. To see what the speed of those particles are doing, then we can make a better judgment. Let's have a look. Hide speed. And so that some are up to 13 there. Keep playing. That seems to be about the limit. Just above 10. So what we could do inside of here is go and fit the speed value that we're kind of creating here between 0 and 10, let's say, and make that between 0 and 1. So when the particles are moving not much at all, 0, they're going to get a force value of 9.8 times 0, which is 0. And then when they're moving up to their maximum value of 1, then they're going to get negative 9.8. 1 times negative 9.8 is 9.8. So that's a smarter way to do it, to actually figure out and measure that speed. And you may want to bring this value down so that that negative 9.8 gets applied a little sooner, because you can see we're getting a lot more floating happening. So we could actually just clamp this. Any particle that's moving faster than a speed value of 3 is then going to rain down. You can see now it's less than that floating. So that can be a good way to sort of play with it as well. But you can see what happens is that as they slow down, that gravity lessens as well. So, it's a catch-22. It works well for the fast things. Maybe we need to just have a little bit of gravity, or, yeah, I don't know. Maybe our base gravity value is not 0, but it's still falling, or we change the minimum here. There's still a bit of raining happening, but not too crazy. I don't know. We could also add life. Maybe we don't need these to live for 100 frames. 1 is 1. This is in seconds, so 1 is 24 frames in this context. You can see now they're getting removed. Probably when they're right behind the worm, which maybe doesn't matter. They're getting sucked in there and dying. So let's combine those two things back together. Kind of see what we get. Looks like we want to merge our original ground plane in as well. So, it's early days, but we've got the start of something interesting happening. And then, this then can become fluid sim. It can become a pyro sim. So let's just go put a wrangle on here and at density equals 1, or at density equals at cd.x. It's probably a better thing to do, because then we'll have variation. If we just did at density equals 1, the whole mound would become smoke. But if we do at density equals CD, the white areas will be the most dense, the black areas will be less, or 0 will be nothing. Let's do a attribute randomize, attribute rasterize now, volume attribute rasterize. And we'll rasterize density. Got a large particle scale there. Make our background dark. There we go. Check our voxel size, 84,000, it's not much. Let's take this voxel size down. What have we got? 8 million, that's not too bad. Play with the particle scale. So we could set the particle scale in a wrangle as well. You could even do something like at p scale equals at cd.x, or fit 0, 1 at cd.x, and then specify a minimum. So the minimum is probably 0, and then the maximum might be 0.01. And that way you'll get, we'll set this back to 1 now. That way you'll get scaling up of the p-scale as well. So the black areas are going to be small and the white areas are going to be really thick. You've got all these attributes that you can, well, you've got CD, which gives you a lot of, a lot of ways to create masking. Then we've got the ability to velocity blur, to smear those out a little bit. And we could also cull this based on age so that we're not emitting too much. So we've got age coming out of the popnet. You could say if at nage, just something that exists within the wrangle context in Vex, but you can't see it. You can see there's no nage attribute here, but it does exist. If you type at nage, it will automatically calculate that for you. If nage is greater than 0.25, for example, remove 0.0, at pt num. You can see how that's culling out those ones. So we're only taking the particles when they're sort of a quarter of their life. So you can play with that value. You could even make that a channel. Age cull. And then we've got the ability to just do that on a slider now. And you can do that, you can create those channels for anything. But now, this side doesn't have an age. This is just the other stuff. But this side, we're just going to cull out just those ones that are right at the start. So we get that emission, but they're not the full kind of furry stuff. Because as it goes further out, it starts to kind of become quite dotty. So if we cull out a lot of that stuff, then we'll just get that nice emission with velocity on it as well. These do have velocity. So that'll come out in the volume rasterize. And I'm just going to do this in one of these pyrosolvers. Now this one, when I look at this now, I'm like, oh my god, everything's changed, but hopefully we can just get it to work. It should just source density for us. We don't have temperature, we don't have burn, that's all fine. We've got V, so we've got density in V. We shouldn't need to do too much, it should just work. Let's see. There we go. When I look at this, I see a lot of pyro with a lot of disturbance, creating very fluffy edges, and you can see a lot of also dissipation, which, I'm usually saying don't add dissipation. But if we're wanting to recreate this exactly, probably they have a high dissipation, because if they didn't, they would end up covering the worm too much. So you gotta kind of work to the shot. Let's have a look and try and find where dissipation might be now. I did not see it under shaping. Look, fields, dissipation. Okay, fields. Righto. Dissipation 0.1, that might be enough. Let's try 0.2. And you can see we've got lots of smooth shapes happening. So, we want to go and add disturbance. I'm going to... Whoa, where is everything? Sourcing, collision, fields. Use control field. I'm looking for my speed field. Here it is. It's weird. So I've got a speed field now, hopefully, that I can use in my disturbance. Gotta say, I'm not loving the new layout of this node, but anyway. Use control field speed, there it is. Compute range, interesting. So what this is going to do is apply disturbance when the stuff is moving, when the pyro is moving fastest, and then no disturbance when the pyro is moving slow. You could actually lift the end control range so that it still can be moving 0.1 and there'd be no disturbance. So when it's moving really slow, there's no disturbance. So let's try cranking that up. Block size, what have we got? Voxel size 0.2, block size 0.1, block size 0.2, that should be alright. I've cranked it up, so we should see quite a bit now. Let's try turning on compute range, that might be handy. That's interesting, yeah, so that gives you your max speed. That's kind of cool. Let's try that. But I find what you do need to do is actually clamp that down so that it does apply it stronger for, you know, longer. Stronger for longer. Even, you know, taking it down like that, it sort of crushes that field that you're using as the control field and will apply it sort of more. You get more disturbance. Let's try it. And sometimes when you do use a control field, you really need to crank up your disturbance values because the control field might be lessening the effect. You can see there it's very disturbed now. But, you know, in the context of this effect, that kind of might work okay. It's probably a little too much. The dissipation was a little high. Let's turn that back up. And, you know, because this is dirt, this is meant to be dust, it may be good to have a strong feeling of gravity. Pulling that, you know, pulling it down. Let's try and find where that might be. Setup, bound, sourcing, collision fields, density, buoyancy. We don't have temperature, so we can't use buoyancy. We could do wind, I suppose. It shouldn't be this hard to find gravity, and might just be blind and not seeing it. Collision fields. Man, come on. I would have expected it to be there. I was sure there was gravity in external forces. I was sure there was gravity in the older one. Maybe I'm wrong. I can go inside here and add a garage. Oh. I don't know if that'll plug in there. Output. Yeah, I don't know. Not sure that would work. Always fun, an update. You know, gotta find where they hid things. Wind. I'm not sure that gravity is working. It's hard to tell. It doesn't really look like it is. It is kind of, you know, throwing a warning there, although it's not showing me. I mean, I could do this. I could do a gas field wrangle if I really wanted to. And just do... Oh, my camera's frozen. It's telling me it's time to go. Let's try turning it on and off again. Come on, camera. Sorry guys, I don't know why my camera stopped working. I mean, it's not crucial to me working, but it is kind of annoying. So, adding gravity, what I could do here is say at vel times equals negative 9.8. That will be really strong. And I might actually, instead of putting it in force, I might put it in advection. So that will cause it to fall down. Well, there you go. I should be doing it on vel.y only, instead of every axis. But you can see the dramatic effect that has. It's very strong. So we actually want to divide that. What you'll notice, what happens in the solver is it's done based on the time step. And I can't actually see the time step here, I don't think. But usually on a dot network, I can grab the time step from here. And I can probably just take this value, 0.04. Let's do that. So let's multiply negative 9.8 by the time step, which is probably around the same value, 0.04. So it's going to reduce that down to be not as strong. It's interesting. It's really flattening it out, which is kind of weird. It looks like it's not applying it to... I wonder... Yeah, I'm not sure what's going on there. Let's try VFX. Hey, thanks, Michael. Yeah, look, it's, you know, it's all about simplifying. I don't know what. I'm not sure what's going on there. Should probably build this properly in a regular .NET, and then, you know, then hopefully it won't be as bad. I wish I could get my camera working again. Let's see if I do this. No dice. One of these days I'll fix this problem. Anyway, guys, look, it's probably the end of the stream. Run out of time, but we'll keep going. We'll keep going next week, and happen indeed. I wish I knew. I wish I knew. Oops. There we go. Yeah, I don't know what happened. It's annoying. You know, they said that they did this because they wanted to make it more user friendly, but I guess that's the issue, that they annoy everyone that's used to using it the way that it was working. I don't know where gravity is, but that's annoying. Thanks, guys. I'll keep going with this next week, and you know, we'll see what we can make of it. I think it's working. You know, there's obviously a long way to go, but I think it's going to be a cool little shot, and then we can try and take a look at some of the other shots from the movie. But yeah, it's a fun little sequence to work on. Well, yeah. Anyway, I should go. My name's Daniel Hourigan. Sorry, my camera's not working. Don't forget, next week, I forgot to mention, next week is our VFX open day. So make sure you sign up if you want to come and see what we're up to. Talk to us. I'll be there. I'll be talking about the VFX courses. Specifically, I'll be talking about the, you know, Houdini course, but we'll have people talking about the comp course as well if you're interested. I think I've put the link in the description of the video, so if you're interested, check it out. I can't find it now on here, but have a look at the link that I posted and come and say hi. And if you've got any questions about the industry or the courses that we offer, feel free to come and join us. But you have to register, so make sure you sign up. Alright, thanks guys. Click on the link in the description, Vanya. You should be able to sign up. I think there should be a link in the description for the YouTube. Let me just find that link. Here we go. There we go. cgspectrum.com webinars /VFX open day. You can see we've got 317 people going. So there's a lot of interest and it's going to be fun. You know, we've got a lot of people. We've got me, Ben, who's another Houdini effects mentor. Great. Also develops a lot of our content for us for Houdini. And then we have compositing mentors. Head of compositing, Sean, and Justin Molman is the host. So it's going to be a great time. Come and join us and find out more about what we're doing. And you might recognize this from a previous stream if you've been watching. Thanks, guys. I'll see you next week. Hopefully I'll see you at the open day, but if not, I'll see you